Hey guys, just wanted to hop on and give you a quick overview of a new feature that we've recently figured out how to do, which is customizable, stylable CMS maps within Webflow with very little code and no additional cost. So as you can see, it's a very slick map, works really well. Like features wise, there's so much you can customize, and the benefit of it being stylable is obviously you can make it feel really on brand. You can change it to your client's brand colors. You can customize your markers, which we'll get more into later on. So it's just a brilliant solution. And like I say, it costs you no extra money. So that's always brilliant. So let's hop into Webflow. So as you can see here, I've got my section made. Obviously, this map can sit anywhere in your website. Doesn't matter where it is, whether it's in sections, containers, reusable elements, so on and so forth. So I've set up my section, and I've also set up a collection list with 5 locations. So all that is in this list for this demo is latitude and longitude. So these are the two most important parts of this. You can get those from Google Maps, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But for example, if you've got a restaurant website where they have multiple locations, you can go ahead and create collections for that, where you could also have, your CMS landing pages for each location, as well as a map with all of the other locations. There's lots of benefits to this approach. So if I go ahead into my collection, you can see we've got 2 really long numbers. So these are really easy to get. So all I do is go into Google Maps, find my location, right click where I want the pin to be. For example, I want mine right in the middle of Glasgow. And then I'm going to paste that number in, paste the longitude there, and then go ahead and save. And that's the CMS side of it done. So if we move on to the code next, if you're like me, you're not a developer by any stretch of the imagination, but you do understand a little bit of code. Or if you're new to Webflow, you've been stuck on a feature like this, you don't even need to understand the code. I'll walk you through how to edit it, and then you don't even need to touch it because all of the styling stuff is done in Mapbox, which is the kind of provider that we use for these maps. So as you can see in the head tag, I've put in the resources. So without these, the map isn't going to load. This basically pulls in the JavaScript and the CSS that the map needs. And then below, I've pasted in the code, which makes it actually work. So as you can see, we've got our access token. So I'll show you where you can get that shortly. And then all of this stuff, we don't really need to touch. You don't need to touch any of that. So if I go ahead and save that, first thing I'm going to do is add a div, and I'm going to call this map wrapper. And this doesn't matter what you call it, and it doesn't matter how you style it. You can set manual widths, manual heights. You can set a background as kind of like a fallback in case the map doesn't load, so on and so forth. The important part that you do need to do is add the ID of map. So that will basically tell the code, this is the map. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a collection list. So this is basically going to say, these are all the locations that we want to appear in this map. So I'm going to go ahead and link that to my locations. The most important part here is giving your collection list the ID of location-data. And I'm going to give this a class of locations. And then on my CMS items, so the kind of children elements, I'm going to give this a class of location. So if we have a look at the code, you can see we've got things called attributes, which are really easy to add in Webflow. So this is basically saying we're going to set the attributes here, and the code is going to pull in those attributes. So let's go ahead and add those. Okay, so it's time to add our data attributes, which, like I say, in Webflow is really easy. I'm just going to click on the element settings and scroll right down to the bottom where it says custom attributes. So the first thing I'm going to do is add our data ID attribute, and I'm going to click on this little purple plus, which basically says pull in the information from the CMS item. So for the ID, we're going to use the slug, which is the URL. For the data-lat, which stands for latitude, we're going to click latitude. And then for the data-lng, which is longitude, we're going to put it in the longitude. So in terms of structure in Webflow, it's that simple. I'm going to add a class to my list wrapper, which basically sets the height to 0 rem and hides all of the overflow. Obviously, if I don't hide the overflow, you're going to see it. This is just for us in the designer because we don't need to see it, and this is never going to be visible on the site. So the last bit of structure we need to do inside of Webflow before we move on is basically just create a div, and then we're going to give this the class of marker. So you can see I've already given this a style. So this is what the map is going to use as our little pins. So this can be anything you like. It can be an SVG. So for example, if I wanted to set this as an SVG, I would just add a background image with the SVG because you can't put stuff inside of this marker. You have to style the marker directly. So say my SVG was 16 pixels by 24 pixels, I would just set the height of my marker to that, and then I would add my image. Or you can do like I've done here. I've just created a circle by creating a square, giving it radius of 100, adding a border, adding the background color. So now my marker is done, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because it saves the class for me. So if you've got a habit of cleaning up your classes, just make sure you don't delete this marker class because otherwise your map isn't going to work. So now we've got the structure in there. We've got our list wrapper with our locations. That has the ID of location data, and then our location has all of our custom attributes. All we need to do now is just tweak the code in the body tag with our own Mapbox access token and our own styling sheet. So we're going to head over to Mapbox now. And in Mapbox, it is super easy. So once you've created an account, you'll be taken to this page. We're just going to go ahead and click Create Map in Studio. And once you're in, you can see we've got a list of maps here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one and we'll set up a new one. So obviously you won't have any maps here. We're going to create a new style. You can use any of their presets. I'm going to go for monochrome in dark. So then that creates the map for me. And all I need to do now is if I want to change the color, I can change the color of everything. It's super customizable. And then what I'm going to do, because all of my locations are in the UK, we're going to go ahead and scroll over to the UK. And then I'm going to get the map to the point I'm happy with. So I'm happy this is kind of zoomed in enough. What I'm going to do is go into my settings. And as you can see, default map position down here, as I move, those numbers change. And as I zoom in, the numbers also change. So once I'm happy, I'm going to go ahead and click lock. So this basically means whenever the map loads, it's going to load to this point. So I'm going to go ahead and publish that. And that's now published. So now we are going to grab the URL and for the style and the access key that we need. Okay, so now that our map's styled, we're going to go ahead and make sure it's published to the latest version. And then we're going to click share, scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says developer resources. You can see it gives us a URL for the style. And the most important part, which is the access token. Your map is not going to work without this access token. So I'm going to go into Webflow. I'm going to go into tutorial, and then I'm going to paste my access token in here. Yours will look a bit different. I believe it will say like paste your access token here. And then I'm going to go ahead and get my style URL as well. So I'm going to copy that from here, and then I'm going to paste that in here like so. And then the one thing you'll notice in this code is that it will center the pin based on the last location, like the latest location in your collection. So if you don't want that, so if you're like me and you want kind of an overview of the whole map rather than it being zoomed into one pin, what I'm going to do is go into my settings here in my default map position, and I'm going to copy these two strings of numbers. And then in between these square brackets, I'm just going to paste those two numbers. And if I look in Mapbox as well, it tells me my zoom level. So I'm at 5.7. zoom level. So here where it says zoom, I'm going to change that to 5.7. So now, if we publish the site, and I refresh this page, you can see we've got a fully functioning CMS map with all of our pins and our locations. And I can give you an example. If we, for example, remove Glasgow, so we save that as a draft instead, and then we republish this, you can see Glasgow's now gone. That is as simple as that. So yeah, that was the CMS map in Webflow. The code can be found in the description. Hopefully the steps were nice and clear for you to follow. If you've got any questions, just leave a comment below. Thanks, guys.